We're joined by our senior advisor on international affairs and national security, Rick Grenell, and of course Jordan Than are with me as well. We have filed at the UN a series of documents, which I'm going to get into in a moment, but there's other international news I wanted to get to first. And Rick, that international news is a historic moment, and you were the envoy on this. Israel and Kosovo not only establishing diplomatic relations, but the Kosovo government opening up an embassy ultimately in Jerusalem, which is hugely significant. Tell us about this one.
I was so proud yesterday to watch this happen online because of COVID. It needed to all be social distanced. And look, Kosovo is a majority Muslim country. And as part of our agreement, the normalization agreement, Serbia and Kosovo both established embassies and diplomatic relations with Israel. This is unbelievable. Part of the Abraham Accords, the success of the Trump administration. I watched yesterday as the foreign minister in Israel, the foreign minister and prime minister in Kosovo signed documents, established diplomatic relations. There's already talk about trade and investment. This is truly historic. It would not have happened if not for President Trump's leadership. And I think that this creates peace for the Middle East even further. And we will see the benefits of having Kosovo and Serbia in the Balkans begin to have greater diplomatic relations with Israel. This is a win for everybody around the world.
I understand we've got some breaking news also. Jordan, you've been following it. What's the latest?
That's right. Terry on Facebook wrote in, we were talking about Durham. Does the new administration mean that Durham's investigation has been shut down? And there's just breaking news now on Fox News that the Durham probe has switched its focus from the CIA to the FBI, but does not expect any prosecutions of high-level officials like the Jim Comey types, like the types we were just talking about. So while they are still active and they are now invested, they've gone from the CIA to the FBI, not to expect high-level prosecutions. That is breaking news from Fox News right now. And of course, all that could change as they continue their FBI investigation. The big question is how long Joe Biden and his administration allow them to continue.
You know what this means to me? ACLJ now more than ever. Because this is the typical government response. Here you go on for a year and a half, 2 years, and we're going to get some low-level, lawyer that did something it was a crime. Of course, he ended up getting probation. But, Rick, you were inside government. I represented the President of the United States, the 45th President of the United States, and worked on these cases. But this is why our focus at the American Center for Law and Justice is to seek justice. The scriptures say, justice, justice shall you pursue. And that's what we're going to have to do here because you cannot rely on government to do it. Rick?
Look, you have to pressure. And that's why this is no better time to support the ACLJ.
Yep.
We have to put pressure on the government. I actually believe that the Durham report this news may not be accurate because the Durham investigators are looking at all sorts of people. We don't know. Durham has been very secretive, very private about what's going on. We need to pressure and utilize every angle that we can in the courts and public pressure to let the government know that consequences are what we demand. We cannot have the typical government response of just saying, well, we'll kick the can down the road and some lower level person is going to take the fall. That's unacceptable.
I think about the situation there. I think about the situation with Congressman Swalwell, who we are now suing the various government agencies to get the real information on that. And then, Than, I go back to the days leading up to our massive lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service, where they were in the same exact posture. They were doing targeting of conservatives and pro-life groups, and we did Freedom of Information Act requests, among other things, went to federal court and ultimately took down that entire division, the tax-exempt division, because of the nonsense that they were doing and trying to get away with. Now, the government had all these watchdogs, and the FBI was doing an investigation, and it went to nothing. We ended up getting a court order and millions of dollars in damages.
Here's the honest truth, Jay. Without the efforts of the ACLJ and those pieces of litigation, Lois Lerner would still be in senior leadership position at the IRS. And plans like the one that she executed to target conservatives, that one would be continuing, as would others, Jay. I mean, I agree with Rick that the pressure has to stay up because you can get positive results at times, but it only happens, at least in my experience, it only happens when they actually get caught. You've got to catch them with their hand in the cookie jar and then be willing, quite honestly, Jay, to take them all the way to court, because otherwise the strategy is to run the clock out, let election cycles pass, filter new political appointees in, and then just let the investigations expire. We're not going to do that on any of these matters, and the road is often a lot longer than we like it to be, but you've got to stay the course.
No, there's no doubt about it. And Jordan, I was thinking about this. The fact of the matter is, as we look at this new lawsuit, and it'll be a lawsuit against the FBI, it'll be an office against a lawsuit against the NSA and others. This is our first lawsuit that on the other side of this is going to be the Biden lawyers, the Department of Justice under Joe Biden. That changes things too.
That does. The stall tactics change. It takes much longer to get information that Americans have the right to get, and it's easier to get when you work through an organization like the ACLJ with an expertise in FOIA litigation at the federal and even state level. But what you have to understand is now you're not dealing with an administration that's just got to work through a little bit of the bureaucracy. You're dealing with an administration that accepts everything as truth from the bureaucracy. So even easy information that would usually be given right over in FOIA, we will have to fight for. And as you said, it's finding that needle in the haystack in the emails that leads usually to the larger request. But it takes going to court, especially under this administration, the Biden administration, and they're going to push hard not to give any information that would make them look bad or shed light on the targeting of President Trump and his campaign.
And this goes beyond that. This we're talking about here. We're talking about, of course, an ongoing situation because Eric Swalwell's a manager, Rick. I mean, he's an impeachment was promoted to impeachment manager while he was is subject to this scandal involving the Chinese. But for our audience, as we close out this segment with a minute and a half to go here, I think it's very important for you to put forward once again, the threat from the Chinese government that we have to be on top of at the ACLJ and our international affiliates.
And let me be careful about what I say here because I want to always be sensitive to classified information.
Okay.
We have a crisis with China. They have secretly infiltrated academia. They have leveraged our local politicians, our state politicians, governors, and members of Congress. The intelligence community knows this. There are certain individuals that we have had to go and give defensive briefings to say, hey, you're getting a little bit too close to a Chinese spy. And those individuals know exactly what's going on. Some have crossed the line, and they also need to be held to account, not just get a defensive briefing. This is a crisis. The intelligence community knows this, and we must stay the course and push the government to make sure that there are consequences for people who break the law.
All right, Rick Grenell, Senior Advisor to the American Center for Law and Justice for International Affairs and National Security. Thank you for that insight.